There's a question many people ask after being involved with a narcissist. What triggers narcissistic behavior? Why do they seem charming, confident, and affectionate one moment, and then suddenly turn cold, defensive, or cruel? What makes them shift so quickly from idealization to hostility? The answer lies in the psychological core of narcissism itself, a fragile inner world hidden behind a mask of superiority. In this text, we'll explore the main triggers that activate narcissistic behavior, the emotional pressure points that cause them to react with anger, withdrawal, or manipulation. From a clinical perspective, according to the DSM-5, narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is characterized by grandiosity, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. But as psychoanalysts Otto Kernberg and Heinz Kohut explained, beneath those traits lies not too much self-love, but a lack of stable self-esteem. The narcissist builds an idealized image of themselves to protect against deep inner pain, the fear of not being enough, of being unworthy, or of being rejected. When something or someone threatens that idealized image, the defense system activates. That's when you see the sharp shift, from charm to hostility, from confidence to rage. One of the biggest triggers for a narcissist is criticism. Even mild constructive feedback can feel like a personal attack. A person with healthy self-esteem can think, "I made a mistake, but I'm still okay." A narcissist can't separate "I made a mistake" from "I am a mistake." Criticism pierces their illusion of perfection, which is intolerable. As a result, they may respond with narcissistic rage, attacking or belittling the person who criticized them, or with emotional withdrawal, using silence or indifference as punishment. In both cases, the criticism feels like an existential threat, not just an opinion. Another powerful trigger is rejection or abandonment, whether real or perceived. Narcissists experience rejection as a deep emotional wound because it echoes something old, an early experience of not feeling loved, seen, or accepted for who they truly were. When someone sets a boundary, walks away, or loses interest, the narcissist interprets it as proof of their unworthiness. In response, they might devalue the person who left, saying things like, "They were never that special anyway," or desperately try to win them back, only to discard them later. In doing so, they transform vulnerability into control. They turn being rejected into being the one who rejects. Failure is another major trigger. A narcissist's sense of worth depends on maintaining the image of being exceptional, successful, and admired. When reality doesn't match that fantasy, when they fail at work, lose status, or face disappointment, they often experience narcissistic shame, a crushing internal collapse. Kernberg described this as an unbearable feeling that must be defended against at all costs. That's why narcissists often deny responsibility, blame others, or lash out. In their world, it's safer to distort reality than to face humiliation. Another key trigger is loss of attention or admiration. For narcissists, attention is like oxygen. Without it, their inner sense of self begins to crumble. When you stop reacting to them, stop giving praise, or simply lose interest, they feel invisible, and for a narcissist, invisibility equals annihilation. To regain control, they might provoke you emotionally, create drama, or reappear after a period of silence. Anything to elicit a reaction. Even anger or confrontation can serve as a temporary fix, because it reassures them that they still matter. There's also a more subtle but powerful trigger: other people's vulnerability. Paradoxically, seeing someone else in pain can activate discomfort in a narcissist. Your sadness, fear, or emotional openness reminds them of their own repressed fragility, the feelings they've spent their entire lives avoiding. That's why, instead of offering empathy, they may react with coldness, sarcasm, or irritation. It's not necessarily cruelty, it's self-defense. They distance themselves from your vulnerability to avoid feeling their own. Another common trigger is the independence of others. When a partner, friend, or colleague begins to assert independence, making decisions, setting boundaries, or showing emotional autonomy, the narcissist can feel threatened. Their sense of worth depends on being needed, admired, or in control. So when you no longer rely on them, it creates a sense of loss of power. This is often when the cycle of idealization and devaluation appears. They may first elevate you to regain admiration, then tear you down to restore dominance. According to Elsa Roningstam, a psychologist at Harvard University, narcissists are hypersensitive to any situation that challenges their self-image. Whenever they're exposed to reality, their own imperfections, dependence on others, or emotional vulnerability, they experience intense psychological pain. But instead of processing it, they use primitive defenses like denial, projection, anger, or manipulation. These reactions aren't born from strength, but from fear. However, not all narcissists react the same way. Those with milder narcissistic traits, often called adaptive narcissism, can learn to manage these triggers more effectively, especially through therapy. Therapeutic approaches like psychodynamic therapy or schema therapy help narcissists recognize their underlying emotions, shame, fear, and insecurity, and regulate them in healthier ways. As they learn to tolerate vulnerability without perceiving it as weakness, their need for defensive reactions decreases. For those in relationships with narcissists, understanding these triggers is crucial. It helps you see that their reactions aren't really about you. Their rage, silence, or withdrawal are coping mechanisms for their inner instability. Knowing this allows you to stop taking their behavior personally and to respond with calm, clarity, and strong boundaries. The key is not to try to fix or soothe them, but to protect your emotional space. In truth, narcissistic behaviors are not driven by power, but by fear. The fear of being unseen, unworthy, or unloved. Understanding what triggers them doesn't mean excusing their actions. It means reclaiming your own perspective. Because every time you choose awareness over reaction, you step out of their emotional control and back into your own. And that's where real freedom begins. Not in changing what triggers the narcissist, but in realizing you no longer have to be triggered by them.